first, I'm going to start off the stage. We're going to break the fourth wall, and be careful, Mark. This is not part of the presentation. The thing is, I'd love some feedback on my presentation after the presentation. And you all know that it's quite hard to get feedback, especially on presentations. It's like, oh yeah, it was really good. That's the normal type of feedback you get. So, to solve that, I created a bunch of cards. And these cards, each one of them gets the person who gets it. Not necessarily you, but it could be you. Could be you. They are asked to focus on one thing. So here's one about clarity. How understandable am I? How easy was my presentation to follow? Would you mind giving? Oh, lovely. So there's a bunch of them. Is there someone who might want to, and I will ask you at the end a few things, right? Someone who might want to give me feedback on my messaging. Like, what was the purpose of his presentation? Come on. Oh, sweet. Thank you. And maybe one more about engagement. Someone can give me some feedback on my general level of engagement. Thank you. Okay. Wow. Ignore me. So I'd like to begin with 3 flashbacks. And if this was a movie, you would see me kind of go blurry, and then there would be an 11-year-old boy in front of you with dark hair and big teeth. And I'm on a car trip through Germany with my parents and my mother's cousin Hans. We're sitting in a restaurant somewhere in Germany, I forget where, but it was kind of wood-paneled, and we're waiting for our food to arrive. And I'm drawing, as I would do at that age, constantly. And Hans, my mum's cousin, he's looking on, but unlike most adults at that time, he wasn't just telling me how good it was or kind of showing superficial interest. He was pointing out things in my drawings that could be different. He was asking me questions about the drawings. Here is a typical drawing from that trip. It's a soldier from the Second World War. And in addition to pointing out things I could do differently, Hans also taught me a couple of techniques. So one thing he taught me was occlusion. So if you look at the legs, the leg that's closest to you is kind of overlapping the leg behind it, creating that simple 3D effect. Remember, I'm 11 at this time. And he taught me about shadowing, like choose a direction of the light. And the light will hit one part of the body, and then there'll be a shadow beneath it. So there's a bit of shadowing under that leg. End of first flashback. And there are only about 5 slides in this presentation, and you've seen one of them. So it's going to be pretty black. So don't worry, that's intentional. OK. Second flashback. I think I'm in my late 20s. My hair, I have it in a long ponytail. I'm a PhD student, and I'm teaching a class in user interface design in the south of Sweden. And I have one student, he's rarely in class. His work isn't that good, but mostly he seems to have a difficulty understanding the material. And to be frank, just between us, he didn't have much of a kind of raw design talent to lean on. Anyway, the time comes for examination, and I have to fail him. And he's really surprised at me failing him, and very upset. And I'm really surprised at his surprise. And I think what happened is, and this is partly speculating, it's partly from talking to him, is that previous teachers had always passed him. Because it's easier to let someone slip by than to take that difficult conversation, to really spend time and looking at someone's work and understanding what they need to do. And the result of this was he didn't really know at what level he was at. And I think that's very unfair on him, and I think it was fairly unfair on me as this young, fledgling teacher. End of second flashback. Third and final flashback. I'm now in my mid-30s. I'm doing user interface stuff at Sony Mobile. You might remember, possibly, that they made mobile phones. It's the afternoon, and I'm not doing anything, I'm not doing any real work. I'm moving things around. I'm changing the corner radius of something. I'm not really adding any value, just making my design prettier. So I turn to my friend Eric, and he spends 10 minutes with me discussing the design work that I've been creating. And he points out some gaps in my thinking. He points out some avenues that I could explore that I've kind of been blind to. And I spent that afternoon in a creative reverie. I seem to remember that I left work a bit early that day. End of flashbacks. We're back in Düsseldorf. I'm in my 50s again, unfortunately. And I'm giving a talk on design feedback. My name is Léon. I am a freelancing designer and user researcher. And the reason I'm giving this talk is because I believe that design feedback is one of the most powerful ways of getting better, or of increasing the quality of your work. And in fact, feedback is one of the most powerful means of getting better at anything. And yet, we do it so seldomly. Or at least we don't do it enough and well enough. And I've talked to a lot of designers about this. Why is it that you don't get more feedback or give more feedback? And they say things like, well, my project is so complicated, it would take too long to explain it to someone else so that they can give me some useful feedback. Or they say things like, I know I'm not finished. If I show them something unfinished, it's going to be really painful. And of course, they say, I hate getting feedback. It just makes me really uncomfortable. And I ask them, so why don't you give more feedback? And they'll say things like, well, I'm a bit unsure what to look for and give feedback on. And I'm unsure how to do it and what words to use. And to be honest, I really don't want to upset anyone. So you hear it's a kind of a mix of psychological or emotional reasons for not giving or getting feedback and more practical things. And I think that if we can solve the emotional issues, the practical things will fall into place. Or certainly difficult to do it the other way around. So through the years, I've experimented with different ways of looking at feedback. Just thinking about feedback, different perspectives you can take on feedback that really change what the experience is like of receiving it. Now, I'm certain that all 7 are not going to fit each one of you, but if one did, if one of the things I'm going to share you, I don't know why I'm pointing there because it's going to be black, but if one of the things I share with you, if it's useful, then I think you will have to agree that your time with me have been worthwhile. Okay, so here we go. It's going to sound a bit like a cliche, but bear with me. Number 1, feedback is a gift. What do I mean by that? I mean that when someone gives me useful feedback, I can suddenly do something that I couldn't do previously. I see gaps in my thinking, I see opportunities that I was blind to, my work improves, so it's a gift. And it is a gift even if it wasn't intended as such by the person giving it to you. If it's useful to you, it's a gift. Now, receiving feedback, I actually don't know if this is true for everyone, so am I the only person who finds it slightly uncomfortable to get feedback? Can we have a show of hands? Do you feel it uncomfortable? Not as much as I would have thought. Okay, good on you. I'll get off the stage. No. What I like to do, and it might be useful to some of you, is when I feel that sense of discomfort, I like to think of it as a signal that I'm getting something that's useful. The reason I'm feeling uncomfortable is because it's a bit of a challenge to what I've done, or it's a bit of a challenge to my thinking. And so I can kind of reinterpret that uncomfortable feeling as, something useful is happening. Number 2, feedback is just information. It's just words, It's just information. You don't have to be afraid of it. You don't have to obey it. You don't have to do anything with it. But it's available to you to take different stances towards it. You can look at it, you can experiment with it, you can contemplate it. So think of feedback as one more design material, as all of the, together with all the other design materials that you may have, whatever those might be. It might be some user research. It might be a component library. Feedback is just one more design material. 3. Become a collector of feedback and information. If it's useful, go into any situation where someone is giving you feedback and decide to get as much of it as possible. See it as a kind of game. Okay, I'm going to get as much and as deep feedback as possible. It probably means that you will defend yourself less, you will explain yourself less, you will spend less time talking and more time listening. But see it as a sport to come away from a session with as much feedback as possible. And then later you decide what to do it. You don't have to decide what to do with it in that moment. Thinking of feedback as information neutralizes some of its emotional negative qualities. If you're interested in user research, use the same methods that you would use to get insights from users. Ask follow-up questions. Test your understanding by rephrasing what you heard and seeing if you got it right. Dig deeper. 4, and this will be familiar from earlier today, everyone doesn't have to like your design. It's true. And everyone doesn't have to like you even. In fact, liking is a pretty poor measure of the quality of a piece of design, but we somehow get stuck there sometimes. There are probably better things than liking. There are other goals to do with what you want your users to do, what you want them to think and feel and say. I find it reminding myself of how poor a metric liking is and refocusing on what the design is supposed to do, I find also makes it much easier to listen to feedback. Also makes it much easier to sort useful from unuseful feedback. 5. It's rarely about you anyway. Someone may seem irritated or displeased or disinterested, and it's rarely about you. They may just have had a really, a rubbish meeting before they met with you, an argument at home, or just they're constipated. So, or more commonly, it's just their thinking face. I think we all have a friend who has a thinking face, and you're wondering, have I pissed him or her off? It's like, no, they're just thinking. So my simple advice is to withhold your own reactions to the reactions of others, and instead try and summarize what you think they've said and check your understanding. 6. There are some people who ask for feedback, but they secretly hope to get none. They just want a slap on the back and a thumbs up, and you're good to go. And I think we can all kind of fall prey to this, that we're asking for feedback, we're kind of hoping, oh, I'm maybe going to get away with it. And if that's your attitude, then asking for feedback, there will always be some apprehension. Am I going to get, some positive or some negative feedback? If you instead think about feedback as something that's inevitable, there will always be something that you can change in your work, because there are always other perspectives. There are always different preferences. If you just assume that you're going to get some feedback and some of it's going to require work from you, then that apprehension disappears, because there's no longer a question of whether you will or will not get some negative feedback. Just assume there's going to be some. 7. Okay, even though I love feedback and I really see the value of it, and there's nothing that I make where I don't ask for feedback. Right, Oliver? You'll see later. I asked Oliver for some feedback on a cover that I'm creating. Even though I love it, it still hurts sometimes. It still stings, because we're all human. So the only thing you can do is kind of go, oh, there I was, being human again, and then move on. But you can also take it as an opportunity to learn something about yourself. Adrienne was talking about getting feedback or getting some response on your code and seeing that as a learning opportunity. And I'm saying it's a learning opportunity about yourself. What was it about the feedback that made me react? And the way to go about it is to pinpoint exactly when your reaction kind of made itself known. Exactly when was it? Who said something? Who was it? Is there something about who it was who said something? What did they say? What tone of voice did they use? If you can pinpoint it, you can start to learn something about your own reactions. Oh, a slide. Okay. So the point of this slide is we're going to just take like 4 seconds, and you're going to remind yourself of what some of these things were, and maybe decide on one thing that you want to remember until later. That's a few seconds. So you remember that I asked designers, why don't you like getting feedback? Why don't you ask for feedback? And why aren't you giving feedback? And when it came to giving feedback, they said things like, well, I'm not sure what to do, and I really don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And when I was at Sony Ericsson, I was there for about 10 years. At the end of my tenure at Sony, I was giving feedback on all the design that was being created in Beijing, in Tokyo, and in Lund in the south of Sweden. And people told me that I was very good at giving feedback without pissing anyone else off. And it was said enough times that I thought, okay, it's not just a compliment, maybe there is something going on, and I decided to kind of figure out what is it that I'm doing. And I think it comes down to this. And this is possibly the most useful part of the talk. So if you kind of zoned out, come back again. I think my strategy was this. The first thing I did was I started by being really interested in the person who asked me for feedback, or who was getting some feedback, and really curious about what were their goals. What are you trying to achieve with this? What are you trying to do? And by asking those kind of questions, I'm signaling very clearly that I don't have an agenda. I'm not here to judge you. I'm interested in what you're doing, and I'm going to help you make whatever that thing is as good as it can be. Instead of, you hate the person, you show them something, and they try and make it into something else. No. I want to find out what you're trying to do, and I'm going to help you do that thing. And so I'm showing you that I'm your ally. When I know what your goals are, I direct my attention entirely to the design object itself and away from the designer. I ask questions about the design. What's this doing? What role does this play? I'm not asking, why have you done this? What have you thought about? Why didn't you do this? I'm looking at the design object, and I'm trying to get away from me just giving feedback, and I'm working together with the person whose design I'm looking at, and together we're seeing where the design is achieving its goals and where there's still a gap between where the design is and where the goals are. And honestly, I think that's really what feedback is. Identifying the gap between where the design is right now and where you want it to be. We work together. I might have some design suggestions, but I don't want you to have to make those decisions right now. I'm just offering them to you as opportunities. I think doing that also shows respect. I believe that you are competent. We've worked through this thing. We've pinpointed where your work needs, or what parts of your work need more work, and then you go away and fix it. It's not up to me to fix it in this moment. And it also turns out that I don't have to be an authority, because we're working together and you're doing all the work. I don't have to be senior to you. I don't have to be smarter than you. It's more similar to coaching. I think that this approach is non-judgmental, it's unthreatening. People feel that you're helping them make the thing that they care about the best that it can be. And the person receiving feedback doesn't have to defend themselves. They don't have to defend their design. They don't have to defend their ego. And they can put all of their energy into being creative and solving problems. So I've given you a few ideas about maybe how to think about receiving feedback and some ideas about how to give other people feedback. And I'm sure that there are some among you who are very practically minded and maybe find this a bit philosophical. So I guess I should offer you some concrete tips. And maybe I could do. I am in the final process of writing an entire book about design feedback. I'm kind of 95% done. It's the final 5% seems bigger than the first 95 for some reason. But instead of me telling you how to do it, I stumbled across a group of people who seem to be really, really good at giving design feedback. So I'm going to show you a 5-minute video of them doing this, and I think you might learn something from them. I think we should have sound by now.
Would you say to them that they could do differently in their classrooms? This is a story called Austin's Butterfly. And it's a true story about a first grade boy, and his name is Austin, and he goes to school, or used to go to school, in a town called Boise, Idaho. And in his class in Boise, Idaho, they were studying butterflies, and he had to do a project. His job in first grade was to draw a butterfly, and this is the butterfly that he picked. Austin had to use this photograph as his model, and he had to draw an accurate scientific drawing of this butterfly. This is called a tiger swallowtail.
I knew it!
Can you tell, Toby, why it's called tiger?
Because it kind of has the stripes of the tiger right there.
Good. So here was Austin's job. He was supposed to do a scientific drawing of that butterfly. But remember, Austin was only in first grade. And you know what he did? He forgot to look like a scientist carefully. He got his paper and he just started to draw the image of a butterfly that he had in his head. And he wasn't looking like a scientist, and so this is what he drew.
Whoa.
It's not bad, and it is a butterfly, but does it look exactly like this?
No.
No, it doesn't yet. It doesn't look exactly like this yet. Luckily, this wasn't a regular school where Austin went. It was an expeditionary learning school, just like Przemysl School. And so they didn't look at this and say, "Good, Austin, you're done." They said, "Austin, good start. Now we can start giving you critique so you can do a second draft and make it better, and a third draft and make it better, and you can make it much, much closer to this." And he was ready to go. All of the first graders in his critique group sat on the floor like you guys are, and they decided to split their advice into two kinds. First, just the shape of the wings. And then when the shape was right, they'd give him advice about the pattern inside the wings. Alia, what would you say?
You can make it much pointier.
Good. These wings could be much pointier. Who else would add something? Atak, what would you say?
How about the angle? Because, not to be mean about
Yes.
the angle, it's just not exact, so...
Okay, so show me. Come on up here, Atak. Show me what you would ask him to do slightly differently.
Like to make it a little longer.
Longer where? Draw where you would do it.
Right there.
Okay, so pull this out longer.
Yeah.
That's very specific, Atak. Thank you. Jamila, what would you say?
It's like triangle.
Good. Jamila, I love that. So you're saying more like a triangle shape. And I agree. Well, you know what? Those first graders came up with most of those same ideas. And you know what Austin said? He said, "Okay, I'll go try." And he went back to his seat and he drew this.
Wow.
Does this look more like a triangle?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he go out further, like Atak was suggesting?
Yeah.
Did he add some jaggedness here?
Yes.
Like Cindy? Did he get rid of that bottom thing?
Yes.
So he did listen to his friends, and he made it better. It's not perfect. Toby, what would you say?
I'd say don't put those little tail things so pointed in. I'd say put them more pointed down.
Good. Okay, and Ethan, what would you say?
I think you should make the wings like this, not like this. Like
Okay, he listened to his friends, and they said, this is really a lot better, Austin. That second draft really is better.
Yeah, maybe you can make a third one.
Good, maybe he could make a third draft. And so he did this draft.
That's his third draft.
That's his third draft, Hadley. That's just right. Elijah, what do you notice there?
Well, one wing's more pointed than the other, and that side is a little bit higher than the others.
Good. Coburn?
Right here, it doesn't have the inside thing still.
Ah, okay. Needs a little bit more of that notch. So, do you think maybe he should do a fourth draft?
Yeah.
Well, that's just what he said. He said, shoot, okay, I got round again. I'll go back and do a fourth draft.
He listened.
He listened. Does it look more even like Elijah was suggesting?
Yes.
Yeah, and does it look like it's coming out a little sharper, like Cindy was suggesting? And like Attack was saying, it's a little, the angle looks a little better. So now Austin was feeling really good. He said, am I ready to add some pattern? And they said, okay, why don't you try adding some of the pattern? And he did.
He's good at it. He is so good.
And then they said, Austin, you're ready for color.
Really?
Let's look at his last draft. And what do you think? Did it come out really good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually looks great.
Let me show you where he started, just to give you a quick reminder. And then, what do you think about how much progress he made? And Tak, what would you say about his progress?
He made like a lot of progress. He persevered doing it. His friends were honest with him.
What was it about the kinds of advice that they gave that allowed him to get better each time? Hassan?
Well, they told him what was wrong about it.
Did they say it's just wrong, or were they more specific than that?
They were more specific, but they weren't mean about it.
Great.
He
Hadley.
made 6 drafts.
And so is that something that other kids should learn from? What should we learn from that?
We can make other drafts if it's not right.
Good. So if it's not right, you can keep doing more drafts to make it better.
You just don't use things in your head. You want to use a sharp eye.
Good. He used the eyes of a scientist. Great.
Actually, it was supposed to be Attack who was going to give this talk, but they had to bring me in instead. They're very, very cute. I'm not just showing this to get you to like me by showing kids being cute. I think that there are some important points to be learnt here. So what were they doing? Well, one, they had a design goal. The teacher said, we're making a scientific, accurate drawing. So it was all about the accuracy of the drawing compared to the photograph. That meant that when they gave design feedback, they can look and compare where they were, compare it to the photograph. Where were they managing to be accurate and where were they not accurate? And I'm not obviously saying that accuracy is the only design goal, but they had a design goal. So they had a design goal, they could look for the gaps where the design wasn't achieving what it was supposed to do. What else? Well, this whole thing becomes meaningless if you don't iterate. And it was the fact that they had, they were iterating. It was like 6 drawings, I think. So if you're in a place where you don't have a room to iterate, or you don't have a culture or a process that allows you to iterate, then design feedback becomes kind of meaningless. And then finally, you need a culture of trust, where it's okay to say things, and you know that the people who are saying things to you, they want what's best for you, and they want what's best for the thing that you're creating. I started this talk with 3 flashbacks, and I'd like to end it with a flash forward. And weirdly enough, the flash forward is not about me at all, it's about you. Because in this flash forward, we see you after this session, maybe later today. You have a moment by yourself, and you're bringing out your notepad or possibly opening a note app on your phone. And you're writing down something that you could get some feedback on. But you're also being very specific. We see that you're mentioning a couple of things that you'd like to get some input on, and you're also writing down what kind of feedback might be useful. Then we see you write the name of someone who you could ask for feedback. You pause, we're looking over your shoulder, and we see that you suddenly add something to the top of the note. And it goes, to do, get some feedback on Wednesday. End of flashback. Thank you. Now, the mic. Is it on? Thank you. So, how did I do? I handed out some cards. Actually, I have some pictures of the cards. I promised you 5 slides. I have to kind of make good. Oh, did you turn off the... OK. So the first card I handed out was one about clarity. And it looks like this. So kind of, how easy was the talk to understand? Yeah, you can see. You don't necessarily have to answer everything. Here we have a person who volunteered to talk about clarity. Do you want a moment to mull things over?
I thought about it all the time.
Sorry, I ruined your experience.
It was really easy to understand, and it was a pleasure listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And what would make it easier to understand?
So what stuck with me was the simple image of feedback as a gift. That's a very simple thing to keep in mind. The other things didn't have the simplicity of that image. So if you found more simple images, it can be a gift, it can be a minefield, it can be that, it can be that. That would be something like a collection of things in my head, perspectives on the topic.
I'm getting kind of goosebumps. I think that was really good. Well, give him a round of applause. Well, thank you so much. That is very useful. Note, in addition to the excellent point of view that you presented, and that's very useful, and I can take away, and I will think about this, first of all, you didn't give me anything, and I pushed you. Just a tiny bit. And that's my general advice. You know, even though I gave you this card, it's a kind of a contract. Will you look at this? And it's making things simple for you, because you don't have to give feedback on everything, just on this. It's still a bit of a kind of a hurdle to leap over. So if you just push people... Yeah. Oh, I didn't think about them. And a very, very, very simple technique that I often use is just to say, can you give me one thing that I shouldn't change in my presentation or in my piece of work, and one thing that I could do differently? And that, you know, either you get 2 useful things, or it actually starts a conversation. So the next one, I had one more card. Yes, what card? Oh, would you hold that for me?
It's a messaging card.
Messaging card. What does it ask you to do, roughly?
What is the central message of the presentation? And to me, it's the best ways to receive and give feedback in one sentence.
Yeah, that's good. Anything else on that card?
Yes.
Ooh.
It asks what the speaker should keep the same. I would say staying interested the same as you are today, because I was also looking at you while you were giving the presentation and the video, and you looked the same interested as people in the room. And that's really great.
Oh, wow. That's very useful, because I often think that, I always wonder, where should I stand? Should I sit in that couch? No, then I don't want to be the kind of focus of attention when you're supposed to look up there. Should I look there? And it's a good reminder to do the same thing that you guys are doing. Thank you. And by the way, all the cards also end with the kind of, what's the thing you could, like I said, one thing that you could keep and one thing you could change, because it's so simple.
Yes, and maybe for change, add more visuals, because I think some people like more visual than audio stuff. Yeah.
And at this conference, I used to think it was kind of clever not to have that many visuals, because people don't generally do that. It's like, oh, bullets, 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 bullets. And I thought it was nice to have no visuals. But then we come to this, and I follow Oliver with beautiful animations, and it's like, ah, fuck.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Yay. And finally, there was one more card. Oh, of course. Hello. What was your card? It was this one.
Is it doing it? Oh, okay, great. Hi, I had engagement. Yeah. So I have some notes. No.
Oh, yes.
So I'm the target demographic, so I was very engaged. I love feedback, and I love it. One thing, if you were to change one thing, I would love to see more drafts of your initial drawing, because what a little circle between the kids iterating on the drawing with the butterfly, and I want to see more of that soldier. Like, give me that occlusion, give me the shading, and what was your second draft?
Good. You know, to be honest, I know that it's a drawing from when I was 11, but I did pick a good one. I didn't want to pick a shit one. But so I take your point. Yeah, that's good.
One after a lifetime of feedback on your art.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool.
Cool, but and I think I also really liked that. I really liked you sharing your mental model, and whether you were receiving gifts or giving gifts, there was something for everybody. So if you either giving the gift of feedback or receiving the gift of feedback, there was good advice there.
Thank you so much. And okay, good. Thank you. And so not only do I get a mug and a T-shirt, but I get some useful things that can improve my presentation. So thanks a lot, Düsseldorf. Thank you. I'm done. I'm good. Take it away. Oh, okay.
One more round, please. David, Léon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.